Evening, Alistair. You well?
I'm very well indeed. Did you hear what we were talking about there about the state of border force and the state of our borders and the amazing work that border force does in bringing so many people to our country? We really have to be, I think, grateful for the extent to. I mean, what the people, whenever they book in with the criminal gangs, they should basically just buy a ticket. Border force should basically sell them tickets. You know, they should have an outpost in Africa, whatever, just selling tickets for the border force crossing. Be a lot cheaper than having to pay the criminal gangs who probably charge an arm and a leg, quite literally. You could just buy a ticket with border force and they'll pick you up at Cali and bring you over. How does that?
Well, like you said, you might as well. I heard exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know that I did a video on this. I did a video talking about these people, border force or border farce, as most people like to refer to them as, and they're actually going on strike over this. They're going on strike over having unworkable hours and things like that. And unfortunately, it's only the people that work at Heathrow Airport who are going on strike. But it's how the last time they went on strike, the airports actually ran smoother. There was less queues because they brought the army in. People who they brought the Royal Logistics Corps in and people like that from the army, and they actually ran the place really well. There was no strike action. There was no queues. Things actually went better. Maybe as well, maybe the ones who we're really referring to here that bring over the people in the small boats could also go on strike, because that would do us a massive favour and stop people going out and actually collecting these people in these boats that are, as one of your commenters just rightly said, costing us an absolute fortune. It's about 40 grand per person that they're costing the taxpayer every single year when they're put into these hotels. They get the spending money, cigarettes, God knows what else. So for every 500 people, that's another 20 million quid added to the bill for the taxpayer. And we're getting 500 a day easily. Some days coming over. Some days it's more than that. And there just isn't the political will to try and stop these people coming over the channel. Nobody's interested. I'm not being party political here. I don't care if it's Labour, Tories, Lib Dems, Greens, SNP, go through them all. They don't care. They're not bothered. They're happy for this to go ahead, with the exception of a few that you might hear speaking out, like your Suella Bravermans and people like that. But they're very much on the fringes. And every other party seems more than happy to allow this to just keep happening. Labour said they were going to cut down on the number of hotels that they were using. It's gone up by a third. And now they're looking for more. There's no one going to stop this. And, well, maybe one party will, or at least, I don't know, I'm not giving a political broadcast for reform here, but at least it's a fresh party with fresh ideas. Maybe they'd do something. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they'd fail. But maybe it's worth giving them a go to stop what's been happening for the last decade after decade.
Absolutely. Well, we wrote an article which we'll put up in the threads this week, actually, on Sunday, and we've read a lot about the channel crossings and how best to stop them. And some very well-intentioned people have come up with the idea of, well, under the UN Convention, we can't stop them making the crossing, but we can try to dissuade them. We can try to tell them, for example, that if you do come across, you're going to get processed in Rwanda, or you're going to be, what the Tory idea was, you'll get rendered inadmissible. And under the UN Convention, that means you're not getting into the country, but we can't send you back to the particular country that you claim to be unsafe in, but we can send you to a safe third country. So some people have said Rwanda. And another policy, the think tank called Policy Exchange, suggested processing in the British Overseas Territory of Ascension Island, and then from Ascension Island, farming them out around the world to whatever countries will take them, and so on. And these are all very well-intentioned ideas created within the limits of Britain's membership of the UN Convention. But really, at the end of the day, can we imagine with the hundreds of people crossing, and let's say it still went down because not everybody wants to get sent to Rwanda. Say it just came down to a few thousand a year instead of tens of thousands a year. That's still a huge effort. I mean, is it really going? And is any party going to build holding centres in Ascension Island and so on? And it just seemed to me just ridiculous. So we just come up with the ideas. Look, entry into the UK by illegal methods is against the 1971 Immigration Act. The only reason we're not prosecuting every single person that comes across on the boats from Calais is because under the UN Convention, they are not considered to be illegal. That's not considered to be an illegal entry under the UN Convention. So they're allowed to do that. They're just actually exercising their legal right. And that's under the UN Refugee Convention. So what we need to do is we need to come out of the UN Refugee Convention. And when we come out of it, then we can treat the asylum crossers as we treat any other illegal entrant, as we treat any other person who comes in avoiding the proper ports of entry and comes in avoiding the proper visa restrictions and so on. We can treat them as criminals and we can send them to prison. And if we started sending everybody to prison who comes across, it'd be a matter of days and that traffic would end. It would end. So we can stop it in a very simple way. We come out of the UN Refugee Convention, and that then enables us to criminalize the channel crossers and send them to prison. And that will stop it. And that's what's needed.
It absolutely would. And you're talking too much common sense, though, for our political class, unfortunately. You've actually, unlike a lot of these politicians, you've done your research. You know exactly what can be done to stop this. And I'll give the Tories a little bit of credit. I think Rwanda was having a slight effect. It was starting to do, these illegals were trying to get over to Ireland, and they were doing. So it was having an effect. But then, of course, Starmer comes in, the Dalek of Downing Street, as I call him, and he's a complete automaton. If it's international law, then we must follow it. We can't deviate from anything. And no country does that. Even the EU countries don't stick to UN conventions. They don't even stick to their own ECHR. France and Germany do what the hell they like. So why are we sticking to it so closely when we're supposed to have left the awful EU? Starmer's just so determined to cozy back up to the EU, he'll do whatever. If that means taking hundreds of thousands or millions of illegal immigrants, then he will do. Well, I heard Alex Phillips the other day talking, and she said, why don't we call the French's bluff? We've given them, £500 million anyway, and they've done precisely nothing with it. We know there's even French border officials having lots of drinks and food and that in Calais on the British taxpayer. That's where the money's going. These people are living quite a decent life there. And she said, why don't we get a boat one day, whether it be a RNLI or a Royal Navy ship, sail it over to France, drop these people off back on Calais beach, come back, and then leave them there and see what the French do. They'll do nothing. Are they going to declare war? No. But I tell you what, they might start taking their own border more seriously, because France are, and I don't entirely blame them. France are happy for these people to get on these dinghies and come over here, because then they're not their problem anymore. They're our problem. And then, of course, what sort of government, again, successive ones, thinks it's a sensible policy to basically advertise to the world that you're the biggest soft touch in the entire world. So when you come to Britain, you're not going to get what you get in France, which is basically bread and water and a tent. You're going to get a hotel. As I said, you're going to get cigarettes, spending money, mobile phones. It's just been revealed that we spent over £1 million on SIM cards for these people. And the government's got the goal to attack disabled people over personal independence payments and things like that to save £5 billion in 5 years' time. We've got 12,000 foreign criminals sitting in British jails. We've got countries that are willing to take these criminals back. The Pakistani authorities have told Britain, we'll take these people, it's no problem, because they have such a big problem with grooming, etc. in Pakistan, that it's now a crime, and they've said, send them all over here. They're our problem. They were our citizens. We'll take them. It's no problem. If they've got dual nationality, we'll take them. But then, like you just said, the UN or the ECHR would intervene and say, oh, well, what about their right to a family life? What about their right to, not be sent to a country where they're going to be not ostracized, what's the word? Punished for their crimes elsewhere. You deserve to be punished. And these people are breaking the law, like you just said. And every one of them, I don't care if they're criminals or not, they are breaking the law by coming into this country. It's even an offence under British law to get into this country without having any documentation. Yet all our laws get ignored, and some judge in Strasbourg or some judge at the UN overrules us every single time. And it's disgusting. And Labour are trying to say that they're sending these people home. We've deported 19,000 this year. Well, they haven't. What they're actually doing is paying these people thousands of pounds of taxpayers' money per person to go to another country. That's all that's happening. And as for Rwanda, like you mentioned before, those facilities that we built, it was at least 200 million, I think, were sent over there. The EU are now considering using them themselves to send their own illegal immigrants over there. The ones that don't get over here, of course. It's absolutely incredible. We're such an idiotic country these days.
That's right. And unfortunately, what's happened in the last, since these international agreements came in the 50s and 60s, is that massive industries have grown up, legal industries have grown up around this. And all that happens with these laws is they get expanded to take in more, examples, as it were. Like the law never narrows to a specific point. The law always just expands like a gas to take in all sorts of new situations that have arisen. So it just grows. It grows and grows. So the legal precedents and court cases under the ECHR and the UN Refugee Convention, they just expand and expand to take in ever more examples of things, to the point where the law is so much more expansive than it ever was even intended to be in the first place. And more lawyers are coming in, exploiting more and more cases. There's tens of thousands of asylum appeals being still to be heard in the United Kingdom. And these are not like the first time they've heard it. They've heard the person's been turned down and they've got the right of appeal. And the appeal then goes on for literally years. Now, one thing that I would do, and what I advocate, is simply abolish the right of appeal for asylum cases. You get one chance, you get one go at it, and if you don't like it, too bad, But this whole the right of somebody staying in the United Kingdom and appealing, that's not even required within the UN Refugee Convention. Now, the UN Refugee Convention, it does talk about appeals, but it's presuming the person's going to make an appeal back in the country that they've been sent to. So the right of in-country appeals, in UK appeals, it's not even required in the UN Refugee Convention. So you look at things like that and you realize the power that the legal lobby has had to put forward its ideas into the heads and into the voting patterns of totally unthinking politicians who have no clue about anything. It's amazing the power that these legal professions have managed to wangle, and we're living with the consequences right now. And that whole system does just need to be broken down. That's why I say the only way is just to say to the legal profession, hey, guess what? Tomorrow we're leaving the UN Refugee Convention. Too bad for your law company. I'm afraid you're going to go out of business. Isn't that sad? Maybe get a proper job trying to do something positive for the country. That would be my approach to things.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I'd take away any legal aid for these people. If these solicitors are so keen to represent these people because they're so lovely, so holier than thou, then I'll tell you what, you do it on a no-win, no-fee basis. Simple. And you get one shot, like you just said. No appeals, no nothing. If you've been in another country, like there was one, wasn't there, recently, who'd committed offences against children in whatever country he'd come from, and then he was afraid to be sent back to that country because he was going to be punished for whatever he'd done to innocent children. In that case, so what happened then was he was allowed to stay in this country. I don't care if you've committed that sort of crime and you're afraid of being sent home, rightly so. And you should be afraid, and you deserve to face the justice where you committed that crime. But of course, no, they're allowed to stay in Britain once again. We said that chicken nugget one the other week, didn't we? These people are mental. The whole system needs a massive reform. The judges are horrendous. They believe all this crap. The UN believes it. All we have to do is, we don't even have to come out of the UN. We just ignore them. We just say, forget it. We don't care what you say. We're sending these people back to where they came from. And what are the UN going to do? We pay for them. Just say, sort of, we'll stop paying billions towards you. We've got all this foreign aid that goes all over the world, Alistair. We can say to a country, I don't care who, whoever it might be, just take an example, take India. So we say we've got some Indian criminals here, and then India say, we're not taking them back. Then we say, right, well, we'll pull in the £1 billion or whatever we give you. You're not having it anymore. This is what we can you can use as soft power, but they don't. They just choose not to, and we just keep taking them. And why? Because these politicians, these lords, and all the rest of them, the baronesses, they don't live on the same streets as these people. They don't have to live along, they don't have to send their son or daughter to a school where there's a hotel might be nearby that gets stuffed full of illegal immigrants that then potentially poses a risk to their children. They don't have to go through any of that, and that's why they don't care.
100%. And what you said there as well is about Britain's power in the United Nations. I mean, we're one of the biggest contributors and members of the UN. Like, what Britain says matters. So Britain can say to the UN, no, we don't like this anymore. We don't like your 1967 UN Refugee Convention, which was the last time it was updated. Like 1967, the world was completely different, almost before the age. Well, there was jet aircraft in 1967, obviously, but I mean, it was only in its infancy, really. It had only been going for a few years. So, we can flex. We can flex on the UN, and we can say, no, you're going to have to listen to us if you want to be taken seriously. Mm-hmm. But that requires like a nationalist-minded politician, not a globalist-minded politician, which is what we've got at the moment. These are all like they're concerned more about the international order rather than the order here in the United Kingdom.
Definitely.
So I mentioned earlier in the program as well, people say Britain's got a moat around it, and so it should be easy to maintain the borders, and that's true to an extent, but it's also a bit of a burden, because what that means is, like, if you're a landlocked country, you can literally build a wall along your border, like what America's trying to do. You can literally stand at the border, there's somebody a few yards away, and you can say, no, you can't come in, turn around and walk the other way. And you can literally do that with armed guards and the whole carry on. But in Britain, which is an island, we're actually got what the UN itself calls an unduly heavy burden, an unduly heavy geographical burden, because we can't build a wall. So if somebody rocks up at Dover, climbs off a dinghy, we reasonably cannot turn the dinghy around and push them out to sea again. I know lots of us would like to do that, but reasonably, we can't do that. But if we could stand at a border wall and reasonably say, no, walk that way, because we know the person's just going to walk back to wherever they came from. But when you're actually got water, that's an unduly heavy geographic burden that disadvantages us at the end of the day in the modern world order. It wouldn't disadvantage us back in the 1600s or the 1500s when we could just like shoot them out of a sea with a cannon. But I mean, these days it does disadvantage us because we literally can't push them back out to sea. So we are obliged to take them in. And so there's possibly another reason why they all get here, is because we have not realized that. We should have realized that. The time to realize that was in 2018 when they started coming, and everybody was like, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? We should have realized, oh, crikey, we're at a disadvantage here because of this channel. So what this means is we're going to have to withdraw right now from the UN Refugee Convention and just criminalize this crossing, just criminalize this method of entry, and say anybody who does this method of entry will get straight put in our prison for several years. And that would have stopped it. But we couldn't do that because we were a member of the UN Refugee Convention, and we remain a member of the UN Refugee Convention. But until we do that, it's not going to change. And that would be my message.
While we've got these globalists in charge, it's not going to happen, is it? It's definitely not going to happen under Starmer. It was never going to happen under Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Theresa May, David Cameron, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, all these prime ministers, it would never happen under any of them because they all believe essentially the same thing. Like you said before, the world order, international law, that's all that matters to them. British people, culture, you name it, doesn't matter to them one little bit. It just look at a country like Poland. Just goes to show you can defend your borders if you want to. Anybody can go on the internet and look at videos of Poland. They've got the army there. And if those illegal immigrants cross that border, they get shot. Not with a rubber bullet, they get shot and they get killed. And they know it. And they don't cross that border. They'll stand there all day shouting abuse at the soldiers. Sometimes they get water cannoned and smoke bombed and stuff. But they don't cross that border. And, if more countries had the resolve of Poland, this whole migrant crisis would be over. It'd be finished. Because no country would take them, especially the ones that are on the front line of this, which does include Poland, because they're coming through Russia, through Belarus, then going into Poland, or you've got them coming over the Med. So Italy, Meloni's been very strong. She's got crossings down by 63%, I think it is. Greece is turning the boats back now. So some of these countries are actually doing their job. But then you've got the morons like Spain, that's because they've got a socialist government. They're happy to take these people in. You've even got the EU talking about building a tunnel, believe it or not, between Morocco and Spain. Could you imagine?
That's dangerous.
Could you imagine like what would happen there? You might as well just open everything. You might as well just say, refugees welcome me, go where you want, because that's just inviting then more Africans. They don't even have to cross the channel in a small boat. All they've got to do is walk. I mean, it's a long way, but all you got to do is walk all the way there and you just go straight into the EU. And then they end up in Britain. It's just remarkable. Everyone thought Donald Tusk was going to be a disaster for Poland. So did I, because he's such a Europhile. But tell you what, he's doing the job on the border. He's not softening up and he's not letting these people in to destroy Polish culture, rape Polish children, or anything of that nature. He's keeping tough. And that's why Poland has the lowest crime rates in the EU.
That's interesting to know, and I wonder to what extent, and I don't know anything about Polish politics, but I wonder to what extent that is because he may be threatened by a party that's even stronger than his views, and so he feels that he has to cater to that attitude, and that's what you find with politicians as well. Though, when they realize, there's a party that could take votes from us, then maybe we're going to have to get serious about their issues. And today I saw a Tory MP called Neil O'Brien, and we've got a tweet that he made, which we'll just put up. And I know this guy, there it is there, Neil O'Brien. To paraphrase Tony Blair, the next government must be about deportation, deportation, deportation. Now that's a Tory MP saying that. That's amazing, really. I mean, I don't think that maybe you'd have to go back to the 1950s to find a Tory MP that actually said that out loud, other than Powell, of course. But for a Tory MP to be saying that, I mean, he's saying that. Let's admit it. He's a Tory MP, and he knows that he's threatened by reform.
Yeah,
and so definitely. He's saying those things. But that's at least good. That's at least good that he's helping to mainstream what I like to call the deportation conversation, and capital D, capital C, the deportation conversation, a conversation we all have to have. And I'm interested here, Gorilla TV channel, which is a great YouTube channel, and Gorilla TV is a great chap. We've met him. We think his work's fantastic because, having personally been deported, the deportation process is not bad if it's done quickly. Well, I don't know what you're talking about there, but no doubt you can tell us, and maybe we'll get you on the show to explain your deportation conversation that you had with the authorities. But yeah, it's coming up to 5 to the hour now. You've got a YouTube channel. And it's youtube.com/@Preston Journalist, all one word. How's that coming along? I know you had a wee bit of a hiccup with it.
Yeah, it's getting there slowly. We're back up to not far off 30,000 now. So getting there slowly.
Well done. Well, I would advise everybody who's interested in UK politics and especially Scottish politics to subscribe to Ash's channel, youtube.com/@Preston Journalist. Ash puts out videos several times a day, plenty of times a week. They're short and pithy, and he also puts out shorts on YouTube as well. So definitely a political commentator to listen to and a political commentator going places. Ash, thank you very much for coming on. Any last words?
I just wanted to say, ding dong, the witch is dead, and I'm so glad that Sturgeon is stepping down as an MSP. Let's have that.
Absolutely. We didn't get time to talk about the Sturge, but it looks like the Sturge has purged herself and to the great relief of the thinking Scottish voters, I have to say. So yeah, good stuff. Okay, Ash, we'll definitely get you on sooner rather than later. Thanks very much for being here.
Pleasure.
Everybody
Thank you,
say
Alistair.
good night to Ash. Good night.
Thank you all. See you.